In the quiet, dusty town of Mbali, lived a woman named Mama Rudo. She was a retired schoolteacher, a widow with no children of her own. But her heart was full enough to care for children no one else wanted. Every time someone abandoned a baby on a doorstep or left a child crying by the market, it was Mama Rudo who picked them up. She brought them into her tiny home, wiped their tears, and fed them with whatever little she had. But the villagers didn't understand her kindness. They whispered behind her back, sometimes even laughed in front of her. "She clings to other people's children because she couldn't have her own," they would say. Some called the orphans leftovers, and Mama Rudo was mocked for giving them love. They avoided her at the well, and their children were told not to play with hers. She became a stranger in the village she had lived in all her life. Still, she never stopped. Every morning you could see her walking through the narrow paths with a baby on her back, and a toddler holding her hand. Her clothes were old, her house was small, but her spirit was unshakable. No one brought her food, no one said thank you. She cooked for many, but often went to bed hungry herself. Alone and overlooked, Mama Rudo gave love without asking for anything in return. The village forgot her, but the children she saved would remember her forever. After Mama Rudo's husband passed away, she hoped her family would support her. She had spent years helping others, teaching children at school, and caring for orphans. But when it came time to divide her late husband's land, her own brothers turned their backs on her. They told her to her face, "You're just a burden now. You have no children of your own. Why should you get anything?" She didn't argue. She didn't beg. With tears in her eyes and pain in her heart, she walked away with nothing. No land, no support, no one to stand up for her. Even her in-laws said she didn't belong anymore. The very people who once shared meals with her now acted like she didn't exist. But Mama Rudo was not one to give up. With no money and nowhere to go, she started building her own little shelter on a piece of empty ground. She used broken bricks she found by the roadside and rusted sheets of zinc that others had thrown away. Every nail she hammered in was a sign of her strength. Every wall she raised was built with quiet courage. Inside that tiny shelter, she created a home. Not just for herself, but for the abandoned children she had taken in. She slept on a mat so they could sleep on the bed. She cooked thick porridge in a pot with cracks and fed every little mouth before thinking of her own. When it rained, water leaked through the roof, but she covered the children with her own blanket. When the sun was too hot, she sat outside so the babies could nap in the shade. She smiled through her pain, laughed through her hunger, and kept going through every rejection. Her family forgot her. But those children, the ones no one else wanted, they looked at her like she was the only mother they had ever known. And in their eyes she saw something her brothers could never give her. Love that asked for nothing but gave everything. Mama Rudo had a heart that could hold the whole world. Word began to spread. If a baby was found crying on a street corner, left outside a church, or rescued from a war-torn village, there was one person who would never turn them away. People from as far as Jabula started bringing her children, sick, starving, dirty, and scared. Some were barely a few days old. Others had seen more pain than any child ever should. She took them all in. No questions. No judgment. Just open arms. Some babies had fevers so high they could barely cry. Others were covered in rashes, their bellies swollen from hunger. Many came with nothing, not even a name. But Mama Rudo gave them names, gave them clothes, gave them love. She sang to them, told them stories, and rocked them to sleep with the same gentleness she would have given her own children, if she'd ever had any. Her home, though small and made of broken bricks, became a safe place. A place where no child was unwanted. She used traditional herbs she had learned about from her grandmother, boiling roots, crushing leaves, making pastes to rub on tiny chests. With no proper medicine and no doctor nearby, she used what she knew. And somehow it worked. Slowly the children started to smile. They gained weight. They learned how to trust. She didn't have much food, but she always made sure they had enough. Sometimes she watered down porridge just to stretch it for one more bowl. She tore her old dresses to make nappies. She bathed them in buckets, told them they were loved, and reminded them every day that they mattered. To the world they were throwaways. To Mama Rudo they were everything. She became a mother to the forgotten, a healer to the broken. And even though her name wasn't written anywhere, Her hands were writing a story of love so powerful, it would live far beyond the walls of her little home. One cold morning as Mama Rudo walked through the streets of Mbali, she saw a small figure curled up under a bridge. It was a boy, skinny, barefoot, covered in dust. He looked no older than 9. His eyes were sharp, alert, but filled with fear. He didn't speak much, just watched her carefully, as if trying to decide if she was safe. She didn't ask him many questions. She didn't need to know where he came from or why he was alone. She just held out her hand and said, "Let's go home." That boy's name was Tawanda. First he barely spoke. He would sit in a corner, clutching a torn bag, flinching at loud noises. But Mama Rudo didn't rush him. She gave him food, a clean shirt, and a mat to sleep on. Every night, she whispered, "You're safe now." Slowly, he started to believe her. Tawanda was quiet but smart. He would sit with the other children as Mama Rudo told stories, or help them with reading. One day, she noticed him copying letters in the dirt with a stick. His lines were neat. His focus was strong. She knew he needed to be in school. But school meant money, uniforms, books, shoes. And Mama Rudo had none. Still, she took the last few coins she had saved, even ones she had planned to use for food, and used them to buy Tawanda a set of second-hand books and a worn-out school bag. She patched up an old shirt and called it a uniform. Then she walked him to the school gates herself. Other kids had parents who waved and took photos. Tawanda had one woman in a faded dress and cracked shoes who hugged him tightly and said, "You're meant for something great." And he believed her. Every evening, Tawanda came home with stories of what he had learned. He read out loud while the younger children clapped. Mama Rudo would sit nearby, watching him with quiet pride. She didn't know how far he would go. She only knew one thing. Under that bridge, she hadn't just found a lost boy. She had found a destiny waiting to rise. There were many days when Mama Rudo didn't eat. Not because she forgot, but because there simply wasn't enough food. When she had only 1 cup of maize meal left, she turned it into porridge and gave it to the children. She would drink hot water with a pinch of salt and pretend she was full. The little ones didn't know. They only saw her smile as she watched them eat. Her clothes were old and torn. Some had holes. Others were faded from too many washes and too many years. The village women whispered and laughed when she passed. "Look at her wearing rags like a mad woman," they said. "And she still thinks she's a mother." But Mama Rudo never shouted back. She never held anger in her heart. She would smile gently and say, "Let them laugh. One day these children will wear suits I never could. They will walk into buildings I'll never see. That is enough for me." She walked barefoot so she could buy pencils. She sold her wedding ring to pay school fees. When one of the children fell sick, she stayed up all night, fanning their fever and praying. She carried water from far away just so the children could stay clean for school. She stitched torn uniforms by candlelight. Every single sacrifice she made came from love. Her body grew thinner, her hands rougher, but her heart stayed strong. She never asked for help. She never begged. All she wanted was a better future for the children she had taken in. Children who once had no names, no hope, and no home, now had someone who believed in them more than anything. Mama Rudo lived with hunger and humiliation, but she never let it break her. In her little house of broken bricks, hope was alive, because she believed that love, sacrifice, and faith were stronger than poverty. And somehow the children felt that too. They worked hard. They studied late, because they saw what she gave up for them, and deep inside they promised themselves they would make it. Tawanda was different from the start. He was quiet, focused, and always curious. While other children played, he sat with his books, asking questions, writing notes, and reading anything he could find. Mama Rudo always said, "This one is going far." And she meant it. Years passed and Tawanda moved from grade to grade, always at the top of his class. He studied by candlelight, using second-hand textbooks and broken pencils. Sometimes he walked to school with worn-out shoes, but he never complained. He knew what Mama Rudo had sacrificed for him, and he carried that with pride. When the national exam results were announced, the whole village was shocked. Tawanda's name was at the top, first in the entire country. Newspapers wrote about him. Radio stations mentioned a brilliant boy from Mbali. But only Mama Rudo knew the full story. How he had once slept under a bridge, how he had cried himself to sleep, how he had been saved by love. Then came the letter. A full scholarship to Kashinda University, the best in the nation. Tuition, books, everything paid for. Mama Rudo read it over and over, tears in her eyes. Her hands shook as she folded it gently and tucked it under her pillow like a treasure. The day he left for university, Mama Rudo woke early. She cooked him his favorite meal, ironed his shirt, and walked him to the bus stop. She didn't have shoes, but she didn't care. Her feet were dusty, her dress was faded, but her heart was full. Just before he got on the bus, she pulled him close and whispered, "Never forget where you came from, Tawanda. Never forget this little house, this village, this love." Tawanda hugged her tightly, eyes full of tears. "I'll come back for you, Mama," he said. "One day I'll make you proud." She smiled. "You already have." As the bus drove away, she waved until it disappeared. Then she walked home slowly, barefoot and alone, but with the joy of a mother who had sent a piece of her heart into the world. As the years rolled by, the little house that once echoed with laughter slowly grew quiet. One by one, the children Mama Rudo had raised grew up and left. Some went to the cities for work. Others started families of their own. A few promised to visit, but time passed and most never came back. Mama Rudo stayed in her old tin-roofed shelter, now more rust than roof. The walls were cracked, and the wind whistled through the broken corners. But she stayed. She had nowhere else to go, and this house held her whole life, her joys, her pain, her love. On the small wooden shelf, she kept fading photos of the children she once rocked to sleep. Some of them were missing teeth in the pictures. Others wore the school uniform she had patched with her own hands. She would sit for hours holding the photos gently, as if they might break, whispering their names softly like prayers. She had raised 12 children, 12 lives given a second chance. But now her days were filled with silence. Her legs grew weak. Her hands shook. But she still woke up early, swept the dusty floor, and boiled tea even if no one was there to drink it. Sometimes the neighbors would see her sitting outside on a wooden stool, staring at the road, as if waiting for someone to come walking back home. They would shake their heads and say, "She was always too soft. That's why they forgot her." But Mama Rudo never complained. Not once. She never blamed them. "They are building their lives," she would say. "That's what I wanted for them." At night, she lit a small candle and looked at the photos again. Her eyes, once bright, were tired. Her heart, once full of noise and stories, now beat in the quiet. She wasn't bitter. She wasn't angry. But there was a sadness that clung to her, like the chill in the evening air. She had given everything, her food, her home, her health, her youth, for others. And now she sat alone with only memories to keep her warm. The world had moved on. It was a quiet morning in Mbali like any other. Chickens clucked, women swept their yards, and dust danced in the sunlight. Then out of nowhere, a deep rumble shook the ground. A line of shiny black SUVs rolled into the village, tires crunching over the dirt road. People stopped what they were doing and stared. No one had ever seen cars like that in Mbali. "Who is it?" someone whispered. "A rich man? A minister?" Curious, the villagers rushed to the road, pushing and craning their necks. Soldiers in dark sunglasses stepped out first. Then the door of the biggest SUV opened. A tall, confident man in a sharp navy blue suit stepped out. His shoes shone like mirrors. His tie was gold. Cameras followed him. For a moment no one recognized him. Then an old man gasped. "That's Tawanda," he said, almost in disbelief. "Tawanda Masiko. The boy who used to sleep under the bridge." Gasps spread like fire through the crowd. People who once ignored him now clutched their chests in shock. The little orphan boy, the quiet one Mama Rudo raised, was now the prime minister of the country. Tawanda looked around slowly, taking in the dusty roads, the huts, the people. But his eyes were searching for one person. Not the chief. Not the crowd. He was looking for her. Word spread quickly. "He's looking for Mama Rudo," villagers shouted, running toward her broken shelter. She was sitting on her old stool, peeling sweet potatoes. Her hands paused when she heard the noise. Before she could stand, Tawanda was already there. He knelt before her, his expensive suit brushing against the dusty ground. He took her hand, kissed it gently and whispered, "Mama, I came back." Tears ran down her cheeks. She touched his face like she was trying to see if it was real. The villagers stood in stunned silence. The woman they had once mocked, the woman they had called useless, was now being honored by the most powerful man in the country. The next day, every TV channel, every radio station, every newspaper in the country was talking about one thing: the Prime Minister's visit to Mbali. But it wasn't just the visit. It was what he did and what he said that made the whole nation stop and listen. There he stood, Tawanda Masiko, in front of cameras and microphones, dressed in a crisp black suit, but holding the hand of an old woman in a faded dress. The woman who had once been forgotten, laughed at, and left behind. "Mama Rudo," he said, his voice steady but full of emotion, "is not just my mother. She is the mother of a nation. When the world left me under a bridge, she picked me up. When I had nothing, she gave me everything. I am standing here today because she believed in me when no one else did." The crowd went quiet. Many had tears in their eyes. "She raised a nation from dust," he continued. "Today, I give her back a country in return." Then he turned to her, holding a folder in his hands. "This," he said, "is the title deed to land, your own land. And here are the keys to your new home, built in the place where you created hope from nothing." The crowd erupted in applause. Mama Rudo stood frozen, eyes wide, hands trembling. Tawanda gently guided her forward. Behind them, a huge banner was unveiled. National Center for Orphan Empowerment, in honor of Mama Rudo. Her old shelter, the one made from broken bricks and rusted zinc, would now be turned into a beautiful center where abandoned children could find love, education, and care, just like she once gave them. Reporters asked her how she felt. She didn't say much. She just smiled, tears running down her cheeks, and whispered, "I was never useless after all." That moment was broadcast across the country. People who had never heard of Mbali now knew her name. Those who had mocked her sat in silence. And those who had forgotten her remembered, too late, the greatness they had once overlooked. The day Mama Rudo passed away, the whole village of Mbali fell silent. Shops closed. People gathered in the streets. Even the birds seemed to fly slower, as if they knew a great soul had left the world. The woman they once ignored, the one they laughed at and called useless, was now mourned by a nation. The Prime Minister himself returned to bury her. Tawanda stood at her graveside, tears running down his cheeks, and said, "She was my mother before I had a name, and she will remain the mother of this nation forever." Her name was written in gold on the walls of the orphan center that now stood where her broken shelter once was. A statue of her holding a baby in one arm and a book in the other was placed in the heart of Mbali. People came from far and wide just to take photos, leave flowers, or sit beside her image in silence. Schools were named after her. Scholarships were created in her honor. Every year, on the anniversary of her death, people lit candles and told stories of her kindness. Children who once had no future now wore graduation caps. Doctors, teachers, leaders, all came from the love of one woman who gave everything, even when she had nothing. Mama Rudo died in her sleep, a peaceful smile on her face, surrounded by letters from the children she had raised. She had no riches, but she left behind a legacy more powerful than gold. She was never useless. She was unforgettable.